Happy Friday. Welcome to the briefing room. Coming to you from the Washington Bureau of ABC News, I'm John Santucci alongside Catherine Falders and our Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas. And Pierre's with us today because we're starting off with that horrific terror attack in New Zealand. We've just gotten the latest numbers, 49 dead, 41 injured. Pierre, you and the team have been watching this overnight when we first learned of this horrific attack. What do we know right now?
Well, U.S. law enforcement officials are deeply concerned about it because of the scale and the nature of the attack. White supremacy is the leading indicator for motivation right now. Law enforcement officials have seen a rise in hate crimes here at home. 2017, there was a 17% increase in the number of hate crimes reported compared to the previous year. 8,000 victims. In 58% of those cases, race was the motivation, 22% religion was the motivation. The suspect also, John, has some connections to the United States in terms of motivations. He specifically referenced Dylan Roof, who killed all those people in that black church in South Carolina a few years ago. He also makes reference as being inspired by Anders Breivik. Now, Anders Breivik is a white supremacist who killed 77 people in Norway in 2011. Again, white supremacy being the motivation. A few weeks ago, we had a lieutenant in the Coast Guard who was accused of plotting to kill many Democratic politicians here in Washington. His inspiration, Breivik as well.
Wow, totally unbelievable to hear all that. And I know right now the big thing that everyone is watching out for is potentially copycats. And that's something that we were going to bring in question to our ABC News contributor, former Department of Homeland Security Deputy Secretary John Cohen. He's joining us right now. John, I know you've been advising our team here as we're trying to figure out the motive here for this attack. But right there, John, I mean, when we first hear of these attacks, right away, as Pierre was mentioning, different governments around the world are worried about copycats in this scenario.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, as Pierre mentioned, I mean, this was a horrible tragedy for the people of New Zealand, but this is another in a growing list of attacks in Europe, New Zealand, Australia, the United States, where individuals who are motivated by extreme white supremacist views conduct an attack or an act of targeted violence against somebody who they view as somebody who is antithetical to their ideological viewpoint. So law enforcement agencies across the country right now are reaching out to faith leaders, members of immigrant communities who may feel fear as a result of this incident in New Zealand. They're trying to ensure them that all is safe, but they're also keeping their lines of communication open with intelligence organizations and other law enforcement organizations to ensure that there isn't a copycat type of attack.
And John, I'm learning right now that the mayor of Christchurch, New Zealand, is actually speaking right now. Let's take a quick listen to the mayor.
Chose that place is because it's close to the hospital, very close to the hospital, and so there is a direct connection with the people whose lives have been lost, and we know that the police still have cordons on the two mosques, and we do want to ask people to stay away from those places. We will ensure that those tributes are made available to the community at an appropriate time. The next thing that has come through is a strong desire also to contribute money. There are people who are offering financial support that want to help out. I know that Victim Support have set up an immediate helpline fund for supporting the family members, the victims of this terrible attack, and the Christchurch Foundation, which has been recently established, will also set up a fund, because it won't just be for the immediate aftermath of what we've experienced in the city, but it will be about rebuilding communities, rebuilding what has been lost, and ensuring that the communities are able to be well supported into the future. And that will be announced by the Christchurch Foundation this morning. all of the flags are flying at half-mast on our council-owned buildings today and until further notice. This is an expression of our civic support for the communities and the loss that have been experienced, and many events at the weekend have been cancelled as well. Some of them will be known to you already. The cricket test at the Hagley Oval between New Zealand and Bangladesh, which I think is a powerful statement of the support from both sides of the sporting fraternity that were gathered here in the city for an important game, to, out of respect, not play that game today. The Bryan Adams concert will not proceed either, and all sport at Hagley Park is cancelled until further notice. Thank you.
And we've been listening right there to the Mayor of Christchurch, New Zealand, Leanne Delville. Of course, we're going to keep watching the Mayor's press conference. We'll update as we're learning more. But Catherine, back here in the United States, the President, actually, President Trump, just made remarks from the Oval Office about this terrorist attack. What did he say?
He did, and we haven't seen the video of this yet. It's just breaking now from our Terry Moran, who was in there with the President. He said he spoke to the Prime Minister of New Zealand to express condolences to the entire nation. He promised the Prime Minister any U.S. assistance. He says what they're going through is terrible, and we will be with them 100%. So we're still waiting to see that tape.
And, you know, as we just start to unpack a little more of what happened in New Zealand over the last several hours, I do want to bring in Khaled Boydon. She's the author of Islamophobia, Understanding the Roots and Rise of Fear, also a law professor at the University of Detroit. Professor, great to have you with us this afternoon. Appreciate you taking the time. I'm wondering, sir, if you can just give us your thoughts on today and a little bit of what Pierre Thomas and John Cohen were just talking about, the rise of these sorts of attacks we're seeing across the globe.
Yeah, so before I talk about, kind of the political or legal ramifications, I'm a Muslim American. I have Muslim family members. Today's Friday, the holy day. There's the fear is what strikes you first. The fear for family members going to worship in the mosque. So I'm still emotionally and psychologically grappling with everything that's taking place in a very personal way.
And I guess, as we were just saying there, I mean, obviously I can understand the personal connection for you here, but, just in your research, sir, as you've written about this, have you, what common threads have you found over the last couple of years? I mean, we obviously think about the rise in social media and people voicing their anger.
Well, I think there's finally an acknowledgement, or a emerging acknowledgement, that white supremacy is a consolidated, uniform, and universal movement that connects the terrorists in New Zealand with the terrorists like Dylan Roof, with Andres Breivik in Europe. And non-coincidentally, the terrorists in New Zealand cited those two individuals as inspirations of his. So it's important to acknowledge that this is an act of terrorism. The manifesto clearly connects the idea that white supremacy was the driving motivation. And apart from those deviant actors, I would venture to say that white supremacy is not fringe. The fact that he cited President Trump as an inspiration, also concerns me that, the political discourse is also emboldening this kind of white supremacist violence as well.
Right, and Pierre, we were actually talking a little earlier about political discourse in this country and around the world, how that is a fuel right now for many people who are unfortunately expressing their anger in these horrific, violent ways.
Well, let's just go back a couple months. If you look at the mass killing at the synagogue in Pittsburgh, that suspect as well had very radical views about immigration, and that he wrote about online and discussed it. So we're seeing a convergence of politics. We're seeing a convergence of politics and hate. And law enforcement officials, I can tell you, are very concerned that the spike that we're seeing in terms of the rhetoric and victims of this kind of hate is going to turn into more violence. So that's why you see them alerting people around the country. You're seeing law enforcement stepping up their presence at mosques today in Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, also Baltimore.
And John Cohen, lastly to you before we move on, sir, you know, you have been in these positions, John, when these situations happen, having to monitor, you know, the response, obviously, but just in the lead up to attacks like this, John, what are folks at the Department of Homeland Security, what are they doing as far as monitoring social media and other forms of communication online as people are expressing their political views?
Well, it's a tricky situation, very complicated, because on the one hand, particularly people in this country have a constitutional right to have extreme thoughts and to say extreme and hateful things. It's the transition from thought to violence that is the focus for law enforcement organizations like the FBI and local police. So they'll work with the community. They will look for people to report suspicious behaviors and unusual activity, whether it's on social media or in the community. And increasingly, we're seeing law enforcement turn to threat management strategies, working with the community, the mental health profession, in order to stop these types of attacks.
And Professor, lastly to you on this, sir. I mean, you mentioned at the start of our interview that today is obviously the most holy day for Muslims around the world. What do you think is running through people's minds today when they woke up to learning the news that happened in Christchurch?
Well, real fear. They're reassessing whether it's wise, safe for them to walk into their mosques today to worship. And I think that's one of the intended objectives of the terror attack, is just then. It's important to think about the injury more than just 49 individuals being killed. The broader collateral objective is this individual wanted Muslims to rethink practicing their faith and to reassess whether it's safe in Western countries to be Muslim.
Professor Baydon at the University of Detroit. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you this afternoon. John Cohen, thank you. Pierre, you're going to have a full recap on this tonight on World News with the team.
Yep.
We will be watching.
Sad story.
It is a horrible story, and a really wonderful place New Zealand is, and just a family there, actually, and I just know that it's deeply upsetting to so many. So, Pierre, thank you. We'll have more of that tonight on World News tonight. But as we are switching gears here and moving on a little bit in the briefing room, obviously, one of the other stories that is building today is what is President Trump doing regarding the national emergency? Now, we know, Catherine, he has been talking about the vote yesterday, the major rebuke he suffered from folks up on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, and you and I have been reporting a lot on the national emergency to, of course, build his campaign-promised border wall. And this is a huge blow to the president, John. It's something that they couldn't successfully whip. They couldn't successfully whip the votes. And I think, you know, what we're going to see is something that he says will be the first veto of his presidency.
So let's go over to the White House, where ABC's Jordan Phelps is watching it all with us. Jordan, what are you seeing?
Yeah, hi, John. This is unfolding as we speak. Our Terry Moran is in the Oval Office, where the president any moment now is expected to actually sign this veto. The president has already been making remarks in the Oval, and he said, according to Terry Moran, that this is a dangerous and reckless resolution. He says that while Congress has every right to pass this, he has the duty to veto it. He is really digging his heels in, saying that he is using his authority properly here to protect national security. Now, interesting, John, that the president would actually choose to invite reporters into the room for this. It's really unusual for a president to invite cameras in for a veto, because these are sort of embarrassing events. But this is President Trump's first veto, and he's making a statement by having cameras there, saying that he is essentially proud of what he's doing by declaring this emergency.
He clearly said that Congress has the freedom to pass this resolution, and he has the duty to veto it. And just going off of what Jordan said, he's embracing this. He's been tweeting about it for a couple of days. He's known that it's going to get to this point, and he wants to make a point by bringing cameras in there and showing that he is sticking to his campaign promise of building a wall by vetoing this, though it is a big blow also to that promise.
And also brought with it maybe his first veto, but also the shortest tweet we've seen of his presidency, being one word there with veto. But Jordan, back over to you at the White House before we move on. Obviously, the Trump legal team, the White House counsel's office and others know that once he does this, once he actually does veto that vote from Capitol Hill, Democrats are not going to let this lie in the sand. They fully plan on moving ahead to bringing this to the attention of the Supreme Court.
Absolutely, John. There's every expectation that now this heads to the courts. The Trump White House has expressed confidence in the president's action here, and they're prepared to fight this all the way to the Supreme Court if need be, and they have confidence that they'll ultimately win there. Now, John, I'd like to flag, interestingly, the president's new Attorney General, Bill Barr, is in the room right now in the Oval as the president is issuing this veto. And that's interesting, John, because we saw the president tweet this morning about the Mueller report. He's always said that it would be completely up to his attorney general to decide whether to make that public. But this morning, a slight change in what he's been saying on that in the tweet, saying that there should be no Mueller report. So maybe the president will be pressed on exactly what he meant there in this Oval spray.
Totally accurate, Jordan. We're obviously watching day by day to see when the Mueller report will come. One thing we can assume safely this afternoon, not today. Jordan Phelps over at the White House, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And Catherine, we're going to switch gears here a little bit because today was actually a big protest around the country for climate change. Students across the country walking out of classrooms. And we actually caught up with a group of the protesters here in Washington, D.C. Take a look.
I'm John Parkinson at the Capitol, and you're watching ABC News Live. Today, the youth climate strike is happening here at the Capitol and all across the country. And there was no prouder mama than Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, whose daughter Isra was one of the co-founders and co-leaders here of this strike at the U.S. Capitol in Washington.
I am here because I believe that people across this country and across the world deserve clean air and clean water. I am here because I believe we face the greatest threat of humanity has ever faced, and that is climate change. It's with great pleasure that I introduce Isra Hilsi, who is 16 years old, bad as it can be, one of the organizers of this nationwide climate strike. And I'm just excited for you all to hear from her. So Isra,
we are here because we can be. Because the media focuses on some and not others. I know that in my community, many cannot partake in today's action. And I stand here advocating for them and for so many others. Today, I am here for you, I am here for my sister, I am here for my community, and I am here for the world.
Now inside the Capitol, Republicans are daring Democrats to hold hearings on the Green New Deal, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is already accepting the challenge, telling reporters that several committees will hold hearings in the coming months on climate change. For ABC News Live, I'm John Parkinson at the Capitol.
Thank you, John Parkinson. You can catch all of John's reporting online at abcnews.com. So today is Ruth Bader Ginsburg's birthday, the Supreme Court Justice. She's got a pretty healthy workout regimen. She likes her planks. Let's take a quick piece of video for some students around the country celebrating RBG's birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ruth. Happy birthday to you.
Okay, so we figured we would join in on the fun here at ABC. So we're joined right now by Brian Johnson. He is the trainer for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So oh, he's gonna see.
Sorry,
no,
I got it.
Why did you get the secret, not me? So wait, now you've been trained the Justice for how long?
Up to 20 years.
Really?
Yes, really.
So how many times a week? What's her workout regimen? Like, give us the secrets.
Twice a week.
Okay.
RBG workout book, How She Stays Strong, you can too. That's the secret.
Wait, how long every workout session?
There is no time set. So
Okay.
it can be an hour, it can be 45 minutes, it can be longer than an hour.
And okay, now, what is her favorite workout to do?
Okay, that's the question I always get. I'm not sure, Justice. I know the planks are not your favorite, but this is the ones that you respect the most. Planks and push-ups.
Okay, now, for our team here today, they are all going to hate me, Brian, after this. You know that, right?
Just don't make us.
Well, we're going to hear everybody. So we're actually going to go into the newsroom right now with Brian. Come on, we're walking.
All
Let's
right.
go. We're walking and we're talking.
Newsroom
So
workout here.
you're going to educate the ABC Washington team here
Okay.
about how to do a proper plank.
All right.
That's the goal. So
And is it on your hands?
now we already got people trying to keep up with you here. Not yet, not yet, not yet. So come with me over here. Come over
You
here.
gotta learn the
So
proper form.
what is the proper way to do a plank?
All right, I'm going to show you the proper way. I'm going to show you the sneaky way of getting somebody into a plank. So how I would get my clients, I tell them just go down on the ground and just lay down on the ground.
Okay, so you're going to be the
Lay down
anchor.
on the ground?
We're going to participate.
Just
So what are we
lay
doing?
down.
Just lay down.
Just lay down.
On our stomach?
Just like, yeah, lay down, face down. Face down.
Okay, face down.
Just face down. Don't even think about it. Think of something funny. Be like, la, 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 la. All right, now that you're face down, I want you to have your forearms right underneath your shoulders. Forearms.
Shoulders.
All right, good. You got your toes there? Uncross your toes. There you go. All right, now what I want you to do is make like you're going to come up and you're laying on an ant pile.
An ant pile.
Ant pile. So bring your hips up.
Bring your hips
Up. Hold it right there. Go to your forearms. Go to your forearms for me. There you go.
Come on.
Good. Hold it right there.
All right.
Now, in honor of the justice, all together, let's sing Happy Birthday to you. Again.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, dear Justice. Happy birthday to you. All right, good. Now hold it. Right here, this is the Superman. So he says he's going to do the advanced plank.
What does that mean?
The advanced plank is going to be like this. He's going to be the anchor. I need for you to come up. Yep. Yep. And I need for you to go just like this.
What are you doing?
And hold on to him just like to go at an angle. There you go. Lean on him. Hold on him. Lean on him. Hold him right there. For 5 and 4. You got more. 3, 2. You see him shaking? 1. Outstanding. There you go. Everybody give yourself a hand. There you have it.
Thank you for having us. So how often should we be doing that a day?
Well, if this is all you're going to do, I think you should do it every hour on the hour.
Every hour on the hour.
For her birthday today, every hour on the hour until 11 o'clock.
Okay, that means it's time to sign off. Thank you so much for joining us on the briefing room this week. Make sure to download the ABC News app for any news anytime. For Catherine Falders and our new ABC coach, I'm John Santucci. Have a great weekend.
All right, take care.